Atlantic City is just simply to be held by Zoom. So will anybody be attending by Zoom?
Well, let's discuss it a minute. We have an obligation for CEUs, correct? Each council member has an obligation for certain education?
Actually, the council members are not, we don't do the CEUs. That's for employees. That's for others that, solicitors, engineers, or whatever, they get their CEUs each and every year. Council members attend these classes, they just digest it and retain it to the best that we can. I've attended quite a number of classes over the years.
I attended last year because I was told there were 2 classes I had to take.
Were they ethics classes, Mr. Dillon?
One was ethics, yes, one was ethics. And the other had to do with employee matters, I think. Was that wrong? I mean, if this is an easy way for our 3 newest members to get that education and get it, kind of knock it off their list online, this would be the way to do it.
It's a valuable training session when you attend these classes. I've done quite a number of them over the years.
We have dates?
We have dates of what?
The league.
Yes, the league is going to be held November 16th through the 20th. And online registration is from August 1st to October 1st is $55, and after that, it's $65. My recommendation is that we sign everyone up. It's only like $250 or so, a bit over. And that way you guys have the option to go to whatever courses you would like to go to. Once I give them an email for the registration, then they will be giving anybody who registers an update with all the classes. I don't know.
And times?
And oh yeah, everything will.
Okay.
Time and how to get on it, and the Zoom part or whatever software they're using. But you can pick and choose. I don't know if there's going to be as many as there are with a regular conference, but there are quite a few things that pertains to, obviously it's all municipal government, but that could pertain to our own municipality on certain items. So I would suggest you authorize me to sign this all up.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we should, yeah.
I make a motion that Mr. Moore sign us all up for $250.
Second. Aye.
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 Yeah, the only additional comment I would make is that a lot of times, because I've participated in 2 of these conventions, not league, but other organizations, they are uploading the webinars to their site, and they allow you access for a period of time. The New Jersey Trial Lawyers, it's a 1-year period, so you can pick and choose at your leisure. You might want to check and see if that's available too. It would be more convenient for you.
That's a good idea. We need to look after, Mr. Moore, after you get us that link or the information how to find out online, we should each take the time individually to figure out what's best for ourselves.
Yes. I mean, there is a sentence here on the registration or the information that says, as we move to a virtual platform, we look forward to offering you the same relevant educational sessions and networking opportunities.
Chances are when you sign up,
Good.
you'll probably get an email.
Yes.
So all the classes and times of class, so that we can zoom into whichever class we want to go.
That is correct. And it says here that conference links will be sent to each registered person, a registrant that is exclusive to them. So I would be giving them the Estell Manor emails for everyone. And for any employee, by the way, too. So not only for, for just the elected officials, but there may be several employees that may want to go on as well. So I'll sign them up also. But we'll make a list.
Good idea.
But for $55 and all the education, you can pick and choose. It's over 4 days, so take a look at it.
Right. Moving along here. We have
Compensation for acting clerk.
we we had a brief conversation, about compensation for the acting clerk. And, Mr. Bilge, you and I had a conversation about this. I did speak to, Mr. Moore, and it seems to be that it's gonna be right around $200 per week until further notice. Is everybody okay with that?
How about we make a motion so that we can open it up for discussion? I make a motion, we pay the acting clerk $200 a week for so long as he remains appointed as acting clerk, and that it be retroactive to the week that he was appointed.
Second. Is there discussion?
I mean, I think I'm on the first, so I will say, I think it's more than fair of Mr. Moore to act as our city clerk for the interim period at the rate of $200 a week. It's a bargain. At the same time, I don't think that we're being very onerous. We're not demanding a great deal of him. Still, his role has had great value, and he's made it very convenient for us in this, this little bit of a dilemma that we have. I do not, and included in that is no requirement, at least as far as the personnel committee or I am concerned, Mr. Olson, you can correct me if I'm wrong. There is no requirement for him to account for his time or to set a schedule for himself. We trust him to fulfill the duties of CFO without a schedule or without punching a time clock, and I would extend that to his role as acting clerk. That is my understanding of it. Did you say something?
So is there any further discussion?
Oh, okay.
No, I don't see anything.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Dilch,
Yes?
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Owens,
Yes.
Ms. Sparks,
Yes.
Mayor Vinesia.
Yes. Next, we have number 3 on the item here, joint insurance report pertaining to Public Works, and right now, Mr. Olson, I anticipate that you have a report that you want to give.
Sure. So it was last Thursday, August 27th. Mr. Garish from the J.A. Montgomery Consulting, he performed our annual JIF audit. He went over new policies and procedures with us in a meeting. And then he went to inspect all of the buildings that the city either owns or where we have people that we insure or we have actual equipment that the city owns in. So these buildings were City Hall, the Public Works Building, the Risley School, and he even went over the Fire Hall, even though we don't own the building. Mr. Garish, he was very pleased with the state that the buildings were in. He did give us a few minor things to fix, but he didn't put any of them down in writing. It's just normal, like maintenance things to check and update. And he was super impressed with the way the Public Works building looked. And those guys did a fantastic job. It looked spick and span over there. So he kept complimenting Mr. Cornu on that. And that's about it.
Very good. Thanks for taking care of that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Olson, thank you for Mr. Olson, Mr. Dilge, thank you for attending that meeting when I couldn't, so I appreciate that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that were new to me that others may not be aware of. One is that we are required by JIF to physically inspect every building at least 6 times a year. Mr. Cornu attests that he actually does it on a monthly basis, but I don't know that necessarily, notwithstanding Mr. Cornu's relationship with the fire department. I don't know that the chief knows his building's being inspected on a monthly basis. I don't know that the Historic Society knows their building will be inspected on a monthly basis. I don't know that they don't either, but I wouldn't want to be accused later of going into spaces used by other people without their knowledge, despite the fact that we have the full authority to do that.
And he didn't go into the Risley School. He did a spot check from the outside for that concern. But
he made it clear we have an obligated, a particular list of things we have to look at every inspection.
Yeah, he wants us to go inside and look at things too. Yeah.
And log it the next time he wants to see the log. That's all. Just as a matter of awareness. That's all.
Who was the one that did the lock, Mr. Dilge? Was it,
It's for Mr. It's for the Public Works foreman to do.
to the Public Works foreman, he joined the inspection witches? Correct?
Mr. Olson discussed it with him, I was there, and he agreed he would do it. It's a one-page report, they'll keep it in a 3-ring binder kind of thing, on his desk.
So Mr. Cornu is the one that's gonna be taking care of the, filing of whatever,
The inspections and the reporting, yes.
inspections and reports. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Moving along here. Mr. Olson, do you have anything else further? Mr. Olson, do you have anything further?
No, that's it.
Okay. Moving along here, we have the solicitor's report. Mr. Lafferty, if you could, pertaining to emergency help.
Yeah, I was asked to look into the utilization of volunteers in times of emergencies. And there's no question that volunteers generally are the backbone of our communities in the functions that they perform, whether it's recreational, fire, or whatever. The issue with emergency services is a little unique because it involves utilization of power tools and equipment and such. And so I communicated with the JIF, and I received an email. I actually communicated with Dave DeWeese, who's the solicitor for the JIF. Then I received an email from Paul Forlenza, who I believe has spoken to some of you folks on a conference call. And I don't know who was involved in that. But he indicated...
Me and Mrs. Blumenthal. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, he indicates that volunteers, first of all, do not qualify for workers' compensation benefits if they're injured in a volunteer activity. Furthermore, volunteers engaged in activities at the direction of city officials can create a risk of liability for the city official, and it can frankly create a risk of injury to the volunteer and to the public. So he suggested that, first of all, if we're going to utilize volunteers, we should look into a medical or health policy for them. And secondly, in those types of activities, we need to make sure they have proper tools, safety equipment, and training in the utilization of the equipment. And, you know, so I'll give you a personal example of an incident that I know happened in Ocean County. It doesn't involve a volunteer, but it involves somebody who's not properly trained. It was after Superstorm Sandy, and a mammoth tree was blown down in an individual's yard. And while he was waiting for the tree removal service, he decided to start to fill the hole created by the ball of the tree being uprooted. And not being an expert in tree removal, he did not know that when a tree goes down in a storm and it's soaking wet, as it dries, it can upright itself. So as he was in the hole tamping down the fill, the tree suddenly had dried enough that it uprighted itself, and it ended up crushing him against the wall of the hole. And while his wife was trying to help him to get out, and he unfortunately did not survive. So my point is that there's a risk. I mean, there's a risk to dealing with down trees near power lines. There's a risk to bringing down a partially down tree. And you know, your firefighters are trained in firefighting. And so you don't have community volunteers going out and trying to operate the hoses. And the same logic applies to everything. So I would really caution not only for the liability reasons, but for the public safety reasons of utilizing volunteers where you really do need specialized services. And you subject everyone to risk, and you subject the city to potential liability. So those are my thoughts.
I will say that I spoke to Atlantic Electric.
Can't hear you.
I spoke to Atlantic Electric, and I had requested that they produce some signs, and I believe that they've agreed that they will. They're going to make some signs so that when we have downed trees, we will place the signs on the barricade that please do not try or make an attempt to cut the tree because you will be electrocuted. And the reason why I did that is because, I mean, we have a lot of very good people in our community here. They want to help, and they may want to just say, hey, that's why I got a chainsaw, I'm going to try to cut the tree up, even though they haven't been authorized to do it or whatever, but still they do it, and we need to make sure that we are protected so that at least they are aware that these trees that are down, they are alive. And please do not make any attempt. If it's laying up on the wires, don't touch it. You don't see it arcing, that doesn't mean that the tree is not live, and you will get lit up. That'll be a problem. That'll be a big problem. So hopefully we will have those signs made, and they will be sent over. They will be dropped off at the Public Works yard. And Mr. Cornu, as Emergency Management Director, anytime that there is a disaster, such as what we just experienced last month, he will put them signs on the barricades and put them in front of the trees, hopefully that nobody will touch them. Mr. Lafferty, what about in the event that somebody just decides that they do want to do it, if it's not a live tree or whatever, and they just decide they want to cut it up, it's on a municipal street, and they do it out of the goodness of the heart, but then something, because they're not trained, using a chainsaw and they get hurt, what do we do then?
Well, it's one thing for somebody to go out on their own and do something. I mean, you can't patrol your streets and try to prevent unqualified volunteers from trying to do something. It's another thing if you actually organize them, enlist their services, and direct their work. Unless they have proper training and the proper certifications, and all of these folks are certified, whether they're firemen or whether they're equipment operators, they're all certified. And unless they're properly certified, I would not recommend utilizing them under your direction for emergency services. If somebody goes out and in front of their house and there's a tree down and they decide to try to take it down, you can't prevent that because you're not there. But it's one thing for them to do it on their own. It's another thing for them to do it at your urging.
There are a couple other distinctions too that Mr. Miola, I think his name was, made in the call with Ms. Blumenthal and I. One was that there's no reason we can't use our emergency list people that we think of first and foremost for clearing snow off the road, but we could also have used them in the storm. We just could not have asked them to do things that they weren't trained and qualified to do, like operate chainsaws if they hadn't been through the training. But they could have done things like hand move wood off the road and drive trucks around to the extent that we could have used that kind of help. That's what they're for. I mean, we would have paid them for it. They're covered by our workers' comp. To the extent that they've been certified and qualified, they're meeting all the JIP's needs. In keeping with what the solicitor said, it's a simple, forgive me, Mr. Lafferty, but simple way to say it is volunteers do what volunteers do, especially on their own property and around their own house. We should not invite anyone who is not qualified on the call list to do any work on behalf of the city. That's pretty much what they said. People are going to do what they're going to do. We can't take responsibility. We can't run around and police every street and tell people stop. You know, they're going to do what they do, and it's the kind. We have a very active community that way. But otherwise, we should not invite volunteers to work on the city's behalf, even in times of emergency.
That's all that I have to say, unless anyone has any questions.
There's no questions, I make a motion to open the meeting to the public.
Mr.
No.
You know,
Knight?
actually, I have some, I wanted to bring up some new business that wasn't on the agenda. So I wanted to talk about consolidating the committees that we have.
Go.
Now, I mean, I'm kind of getting blindsided about this.
I actually have spoken to you about this before. I have spoken to Teresa about this, and I did speak to Linda about this. There are a lot of committees there that do not have a definition of what they're supposed to do. So if we don't have a definition of what the committee is supposed to do, then why do we have that committee in the first place? And there is definitely a division in the busy committees and other committees that don't do that many activities. So we could group some of the less busy ones together to equal out a busier, I should say, I'm sorry, committee. So this way we balance it out. Since how there was, there's 36 committees, I think it is, and with 5 of us being
36 spots.
36,
How do you
okay.
get 36 committees? There's only,
It's 36 spots, there are 18
Spots.
committees, each one requires 2 members.
Right.
36
So,
spots.
and there's 5 of us to do that's a lot of committees. And like I said, a lot of them don't do, there's been several committees that haven't done anything at all this year. So I think it would be, I would like to make a motion or open it up for discussion, I should say, to consolidate the committees.
Second. Are you done, Mrs. Olson?
as for the mayor's prerogative with committees.
What is the
Does that-
mayor's prerogative?
Committees, assignments.
No, we're not talking
Assignments,
about assignments, we're talking about the number of the committees, the
Right.
responsibilities and descriptions of the committee's work. And I will tell you very openly, the 4 of us, I've spoken with each of the other members of council, pretty much in alignment on that we should at least consider commonality and consolidation of committees so that there would be fewer assignments on each member of city council. And we would ask at this time, frankly, that you, Mayor, assign at the October council meeting 2 people to be a committee to explore the consolidation of the current committee structure so that in November we may have a proposal to vote it and do some consolidating. Are you willing to do that?
Think about it. I'll think-
No, we're going to decide it tonight.
no.
Mr. Bilge, I will think about it.
No.
Well, would you like us to
Why-
vote it without you?
So the 4 of us can vote it without you then?
Well, just to be clear, these are committees of city council, and city council either creates or does not create the committee. It is the mayor's prerogative to assign who is on what committee. And frankly, for a municipality of this size, 18 committees is a lot. And there's got to be some commonality among these committees.
There's
So
probably a couple that could, there's probably a couple that could be
yeah.
eliminated. I'm not saying that there is. I mean, it's just some of them are a little more specific as to, that way there you could identify that particular committee.
I mean, you have your significant committees, which are public works, personnel,
Finance and public safety.
and public safety. They're your core group of committees. So I think what your colleagues are suggesting is that you appoint 2 people, whoever you appoint, to just look at the issue of whether or not there's commonality among some of these committees so that you could reduce the technical structure of the committees. I don't think they're suggesting eliminating any. They're just suggesting bringing some of them in under the umbrella of a committee that's related.
Similar.
That's related.
Right, similar, right.
So I will appoint Mr. Olson and myself to look at these committees and discuss what we think is a good idea to eliminate and how we'll figure out to restructure.
I would suggest and very strongly suggest that you assign Mrs. Olson. She's given it the most thought. She's the one that has brought it up in the past. This is not the first time we discussed it
Mrs.
in
Olson,
council, and I think that if I were
This
Mrs.
is-
Olson, I would take offense that you're not giving her the tap.
I don't think we have a Mrs. Olson on our council, Mr. Chairman, derogatory.
I meant
meant
Mrs.
Mrs.
Owen.
Owen.
I apologize. I meant Mrs. Owen.
And quite frankly, I've actually already worked on it and I have it completed. In my eyes, however, we need to discuss it, of course.
Okay, we'll talk about it over the phone. Right now is not the time to do it.
We're going to decide this tonight.
Right,
With you or without you. We're going to decide this tonight. We're giving you the chance to drive it. We're respecting and recognizing your authority, giving you the opportunity to drive it. Do you wish to drive it or not?
Well, the motion is to create an ad hoc committee to review the committee structure of council. It will still be the mayor's prerogative to appoint to that committee. But the motion is to create this ad hoc committee. And that's what's on the floor.
And do I create that ad hoc committee?
You appoint that ad
I
hoc
appoint the
committee.
Okay, so it'll be myself and Mrs. Owen to, sit on the ad hoc committee. You can all be happy with
I appreciate that. Thank you.
this. Under, new business.
You need a vote.
Vote no.
A vote on the motion to create the ad hoc committee.
There's a motion to, create an ad hoc committee. I'll make that necessary motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
I'm sorry. Aye.
Aye.
Make an amendment.
Aye.
And that committee, up to myself and Mrs. Olson on the, let me say, Mrs. Owen on that committee.
Thank you.
Actually, under new business, there is a couple items here. Number one, we have a issue with the planning board. We have 3 members currently that are on the planning board, and I am not going to make a call one way or another, but we have to have a resignation from one of the members because we can't have 3 members on the committee, on the planning board. So,
I will be, Mrs. Sparks and I have already discussed this amongst the 2 of us, and I will be resigning. She will be staying on.
okay, so if that's the case, then we now have to make a motion to, because it's a council decision, to authorize Mrs. Sparks to be that class 3 member. So somebody make a motion?
I'll make the motion for Mrs. Sparks to be on the planning board.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, so Mrs. Owen, you seconded?
Mhm.
That should be a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Dilch,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Owen,
Yes.
Ms. Sparks,
Yes.
Mayor Vinesia.
Yes. A couple other things here. There are 2 appointments that I'm going to make to the planning board, because we do have some vacancies. One of them is going to be, Mr. Paul Stoll from 9th Avenue. Okay, he has, said that he would accept. And then the other one is a young man by the name of, Jonathan Bell. And I believe he lives on 7th Avenue. I'm not gonna swear to it, but I think it's 7th Avenue. I'll get his address. So we'll have to, get a packet out to the 2 of them. Next, we, still have a little bit of a dilemma with the, planning board. Mr. Judd Moore has said that he would, be a temporary, secretary for the time being. And we have to discuss a compensation, and I'm thinking that probably, if we add a $2,500 a year compensation to that, and then we just prorate the, amount per month as to what Mr. Moore would be doing. Would council be okay with that figure?
Don't you have to make a motion for us to have discussion?
I'm asking if council would be okay with that, in which then I'm going to ask for a motion. We're having some discussion right now, and, I'm trying to keep this friendly. If there's, any discussion, maybe somebody has a different idea. I'm giving my thoughts to it, and if Mr. Moore is gonna do it, he did agree that $2,500 would be sufficient for that position, and then we would just prorate, the months that are left for this year. 'Cause
Well, I mean, if we made a motion, my argument would be that we should specify as to the term of Mr. Moore's appointment, like 2 months or 3 months, not longer. We have him doing a lot of things. I would like him not to lose hope in that relief is on the way. The cavalry's coming, and we actually are holding up our end to find new people to do fulfill these responsibilities. So I would be in favor of appointing Mr. Moore for the next 2 meetings and then renewing that appointment if in fact we haven't found anyone by then. But I don't want the mayor or council to lose momentum in finding someone to become the permanent planning zoning board secretary.
That's actually a, motion that would be coming from the planning board, not the city council. We set the salary, we set the compensation. The planning board is the one that makes the appointment. Mr. Moore will come into the next meeting, and if the planning board is okay, then we will accept him as the secretary. If they're not okay, then they'll probably just sit in until that meeting, and then we'll have to continue the search.
I would say if you want our CFO/clerk, those are the terms.
if you want our CFO/clerk, those are the terms. What does that mean?
It means that you're running the risk of depriving the city of services provided by Mr. Moore elsewhere, and by perhaps, notwithstanding the robustness of his character and his maturity as an individual and understanding what he's stepping into, you're running the risk of debilitating his spirit towards what he does for the city of Estell Manor, and we depend on him a great deal.
Yeah, and
I don't want to feel as though it's a hopeless assignment being on the land use board, because